Welcome to Says Who, your top spot for politics. My role in bringing great political content requires your role as a participant. So like this video, comment your opinion below, and subscribe to the Says Who channel, and let's shout out that which gets this show going, beginning with Mr. Farley Perkins over at the Farley Perkins Agency. So if you need insurance in the Tidewater area, hit up 757-271-6655. Or if you're in Portsmouth and just want a nice ice cream or a shake, head on over to ELG Sweet Boutique over there at 340 High Street. Now, prior to that, you might just want some good Southern food, in which case you're going to need to go to Ellen's Home Style Barbecue Express, which is here in Portsmouth across from Victory Crossing, and in Virginia Beach across from Regent University. And don't forget my good friend, Mr. Seiko Varner, who at Positive Vibes Incorporated helps you with credit fixes, tax resolutions, lending private money, debt consolidation. He also created the Hampton Roads Green Book, which is an application to find great Black-owned businesses in this area of Virginia. And of course, he's also a great DJ. And don't forget the Black Swan podcast, which is run through my awesome wife, Andrea Dixon Chesventer. So look for those as they drop. And now I want to have a conversation today about political independent campaigns. I've recently had on Donna Charles to discuss her campaign for governor of Virginia, and I've recently had on John Curran to discuss his campaign for lieutenant governor of Virginia. I'm bringing them both on to discuss the difficulties surrounding their efforts. That is the fact that they're going through as write-ins in their respective seats. It isn't beyond the realm of human possibility for a write-in to win elected office here in Virginia. We've seen a few. I'm 38 and definitely don't remember this name, but Jackie Stump is raising his hand. Born in rural Russell County, Stump lacked a high school diploma. He lacked a party affiliation. He lacked electoral experience the first time he ran for office. He owed his public platform to UMWA, a mine workers union, which he served as a local official. And he announced his independent run against Democrat incumbent McLaughlin a mere 3 weeks before Election Day. Most observers downplayed his candidacy as a UMWA stunt, designed to call attention to their ongoing direct action against the Pittston Coal Company. And yet he won 7,981 votes to McLaughlin's 3,812 votes. To the media, he was a marvel, and reports at the time emphasized his lack of education, his lumbering build, but the backlash didn't dissuade voters, and he remained in office until 2005. More recently, there's Republican Nick Freitas. Nick Freitas was the incumbent in what was then the HD30 seat in 2019, but he failed to submit certification of his Republican Party nomination. He also failed to send the State Department of Elections his general certification as a candidate. And that nomination snafu resulted in a November ballot that included only the Democratic candidate's name plus the space for write-in candidates. The 30th district reliably elected Republicans, though, and in 2016, they voted for Trump with 61% of the vote. So Freitas immediately planned a write-in campaign, which required a lot of money and volunteers. The immediate impact of the future to qualify for the ballot and the need to run a write-in campaign was to limit the resources available for other Republicans in 2019, a year when the party's 51-49 majority in the House of Delegates was at risk. Freitas overcame the challenge when he managed to get an Illinois billionaire to contribute about $500,000 to his write-in campaign, and Freitas shared at least $60,000 with other candidates in Virginia. He distributed thousands of pins marked "Write-in Nick Freitas," and which those were even popular with Democrats. Delegate Freitas won the 2019 general election with 58% of the votes for his name, so it's very much possible, but so very hard. And to discuss what makes it so hard, I'm going to bring on Donna Charles and John Curran, respectively, to discuss their campaigns. First, to each of you, how are you doing on this night?
Thank you for having us.
Very well, thank you.
Love to have you guys on and discuss more an update with your campaigns or just the difficulties of the write-in aspect. So I fielded the topic with some of my friends in the area who were in Virginia, who aren't Democrat, they're not Republican, but they're definitely politically minded. They could be green, they could be libertarian, but they still wanted to know, why run with the chance of winning being so small? And let's start with Mr. John. You're on the top right screen here. Why run if right now it seems so daunting?
Everybody assumed, like you went on earlier about the story you had, that a write-in is a impossibility or it's not there. What's given an option here is usually running under a party. You spend a lot of time within your party's bubble. You're attending party committees, special, as a Republican groups, things like that. You need to basically go off of that track, and you're going to basically open events, having your own events done with people, a lot of the people who don't even care about politics that you get to meet. And you're for the first time even maybe telling them there's even an election coming up this year that shocks them. I just did one this past Saturday. It was fantastic. It was a car show and a heavy equipment show. I met people who didn't even know it was happening, but had major concerns that came up. I met mothers who had education concerns. I met people with handicaps that were business owners that were concerned about options on Medicare, or people who hired people with disabilities, who had issues where the people wanted to work but were afraid of losing coverages that they had. So it opens a whole new spectrum where party lines go out the window and the people's needs come, and it's kind of refreshing. And I think it's getting a lot of roots going here, basically talk about grassroots. People are saying, look, this is about me. This is about my issue. I don't care anymore about the party. I think the party's not doing themselves a favor by getting out of their own bubbles. So I think it's opening it. Obviously, it's a huge state and word of mouth. And I'm lucky enough so far. I've had a lot of volunteers out there passing out information about me, explaining the write-in. The write-in scares some people. It's a complicated idea. But I think, like Nick did, you got to put out a ton of pens. This is how you spell the name, write it in. And by the way, leave the pen in the ballot box if you don't mind. But it might be a little cheating. I don't know, because you're not supposed to leave something. But it's going to take the effort. I think people are not happy right now on both sides of the aisle on the primary candidates all the way around, especially lieutenant governor. Some people aren't happy with the governor. Some people are just sick and tired of the same, like they feel the party's picking who it is, and it's a puppet master game rather than the people picking it. So I think this year might be a refreshing course. That's my intake that I'm getting from people. Donna might have a different view when she's talking to people, but that's what I'm getting out of there.
Ms. Donna, on to you. I'm curious why you would want to run if it might seem so daunting.
Well, thank you again. And I think John makes a fantastic point about the opportunity retail politics presents when you're getting out there and you're starting, especially with mine, a grassroots campaign, engaging people on the ground level. It is refreshing to hear how open they are to your ideas, especially because they're seeing you face to face. They're hearing where you would go as governor, where you would take their concerns from a policy perspective, and how you engage with delegates and senators. But most importantly, it's that awareness piece. When you get out in the streets, it's really amazing to hear how many people really don't know that there is an election going on this year, B, who the major candidates are, and where they stand on the issues. So running a write-in campaign, while it seems daunting, while it's obviously going to be fraught with challenges that don't always come with having the party apparatus and being on the ballot, it gives you an opportunity to work that much harder to earn every vote, to ensure people know your name. I feel very blessed and fortunate that I have two first names. Some people say not to be trusted, but I have a very simple name. But ultimately, I get a huge boost out of meeting people where they are, talking to them face to face and eye to eye, hearing about those issues and saying, listen, these are the opportunities that I would present as a governor. These are the things that I would work on. But if you write me in, you're exercising your choice, your opportunity to say, these are the things that I want to have done. And John also raises a really good point. People are sick and tired of the standard status quo party politics, the hyper corporate element of the party machine. the fact that people feel as if they are further and further away from the democratic process, and the fact that in the case of the governorship, that you have two candidates that were essentially hand selected, where people did not have an opportunity to engage in a primary to select their candidate, like we saw in places like New Jersey, and even a more controversial bid in New York. So these are the things that I'm hearing from people. They are frustrated, they are tired. I've had an opportunity to work with people who are really focused on things like housing, on the affordability crisis, on expanding access to trades and vocational training throughout the state. These are the issues that people want to know that their representatives, their governor, their leadership in Richmond is going to champion on their behalf. And so that is why I am fired up about doing a write-in campaign.
Now, I'm curious, and I'm going to lead with you for this next question, Ms. Donna. When you get into your mind that, hey, I want to run for this statewide seat, but I don't want to run as a Republican, I don't want to run as a Democrat, do you also eliminate the possibility of like, hey, why don't I try for the Green Party? Hey, why don't I try for the Libertarian Party? They might have a step closer to getting ballot access and having a team that helps you while also not being Republican and Democrat. Did that possibly enter your mind?
Well, the reason I focused on running as an independent is because not only do I find somewhat questionable and even maybe problematic the way the two-party system in this country works, but I thought it was important for people to understand that going to Richmond for me as an independent, without the not even just the architecture, but sometimes the baggage that comes with the major parties, that gave me an opportunity to start fresh, create a new slate for folks who want to see a governor that is not focused on where his or her Democratic or Republican career will take her or him next. That an independent governor, or someone like me, would be able to focus on the issues in front of her and not worry about whether or not a delegate or a senator is Republican or a Democrat. So that's the primary issue that I wanted to address by running as an independent. As far as other parties are concerned, admittedly, I am not as familiar with a lot of the other parties, and I've done some research on, where the Green Party, Independent Green Party, Forward Party, Libertarian. I've done some research on where they are on the issues, but quite frankly, I've not taken anything off the table, but I'm very much focused on remaining an independent candidate because I think that's where a lot of Virginians are, very centrist minded and focused on issues rather than the trappings of a party structure.
Mr. John, I'm curious if when you were pursuing this, if I recall, you originally wanted to be on the Republican ballot for the primary. But even before that, did it ever cross your mind that, maybe independent was a good shot, or maybe Libertarian, maybe not Green, because I think you might lean away from Green, but they were out there, their options, and you're an independent candidate now. Is that something to so easily dismiss?
I don't think so, because even as a Republican candidate, I actually probably torqued a few people the wrong way because I always stay true to my views on abortion. Even I know, even as a Catholic, where they are, I see it as a more open, a more center-line, not pro-abortion, but pushing more to solidify choice for women, which may not be the hard party lines. It's, when and even these other parties, as Donna said, I feel better not selling out where I am and my willingness to break that line to get to a solution. As we see with this big deal going through right now, even hearing the speaker say, no deal is going to be 100% what anybody wants, but is it what we need? Is it what we get through on both sides? That becomes important, especially when you're in the leadership side as a lieutenant governor or governor, where you need to broker those deals between the two parties when the parties aren't willing to come together anymore. So I, as I said before, I find it a little refreshing. I did look, it would be a whole lot easier to have gone with, the Conservative Party, the Reform Party, the Independent Virginia. Now I guess it's the Independent Green Party is what they're, but when you're with the party, it all comes with a hook on it, that their issue. I know One of the parties were about ranked choice voting. I'm not a big fan of the ranked choice voting form. I believe a vote's a vote and you let it go and winner takes all. I know that's a big controversy. That's where my side is. So again, the independent line is there. I'm not giving up. I believe the conservative values. I believe in a free capital market. I believe those kind of areas. I believe we need police. We need those kind of things as well. So I'm still there. I will say I'm disappointed in my party. There's things, and I know people in the party are. There's a clause in the Republican plan, the party plan, that is it, which is basically their bylaws, that if you're a member and you don't support the nominee, that you're basically automatically resigned from the party, which to me is vote our way or get out of the way, is basically the way they are. And some of the committees, now it's up to the committee chairs. Some committee chairs have stayed kind of silent on it, letting their people, because they need their people there, even for the other tickets, especially down ballot tickets. They need their party to go. I served in the military. I did that. I never thought of us as you got to follow and vote for who I say or don't vote. To me, that's a little suppression. I don't like it. I don't believe in it. I understand the party. Hey, where are we if we don't? But when you get to the point that you have to start strong arming your people to get a candidate that your own people aren't happy about, you got a problem then, and you need to let your people speak up at a certain thing for the well-being. And, it's there. So as I said, it's kind of refreshing. I voted Republican. I've been a Republican since I first went into a ballot box when I was 18 years old. So it feels, as I said, I feel a little smacked down by the party. At the same time, I think I could bring a friend. And I think the parties, if they start looking at this, they need to take a deep look and reconsider sometimes of getting it. Because I'm finding most people out, except the hardcore line, most people, especially in Virginia, are middle of the line. They want to basically get out of my business and just take care of me. And I think the parties should take an example of, no matter where we end up, if they're worried about us. I know the Republican Party, the people have attacked me and the party leadership has. If you're worried about me, then obviously there's an issue there that you're not filling. And maybe we need to reconsider where you are. And so, I think I'm willing to accept the independent. So
I want to put forth my own posit here, my own position that I am somewhat intrigued by ranked choice voting. We all have been watching the news after Zohan won his Democratic nominee in this past week. I wonder how that would have played in Virginia for the Democratic lieutenant governor race when they had 6 people. That probably would have been interesting to have the opportunity of ranked choice. But for my next question, which again I will feed to yourself first, Mr. John, this time, in the realm of getting ballot access for an independent campaign, what is hard about that? And what would you improve if you could change the whole process?
Well, I think in both my case and Donna's case, the process is vulnerable. I've learned right now, like basically this year it's done. This election, it's over. But let's look next year when we got a U.S. Senate race to be on the line. What if I I didn't think Mark Warner should be running. I get somebody on his staff or something like that. He has to go out and get the same signatures that Donna and I had to do. And what happens if somebody loses them, destroys them, disappears with them out of it, and he can't make the ticket? Now, I'm sure at that point, a sitting senator, the party would nominate him at the last minute and he'd be saved and go on there. What concerns me with this isn't an issue of I was wrong, Donna was wrong. The people, every single person put a signature on those papers were wronged. Their voice, their opinion. They might have not ended up voting for either one of us, but they all felt that we deserved a chance to be voted for, in a primary or on the ballot itself. And somebody took that away from them. And what disturbs me is the Department of Elections has stayed totally silent about this matter. And in my case, the Republican, the RPV, has stayed totally silent on the matter, not even approaching it, not even releasing it. Now, the RPV had an out. They could say it's the police matter. We're not getting involved. It's a terrible thing. But the law itself never provides relief in it. The law, which comes down to election interference, goes after the criminal, the person committed the act, but there's no restitution, no right to the victim, which is the voter and the candidate, to say, well, if this is proven that the person has to be allowed on the ballot, something needs to be, there is nothing in there. So, has come clear, it is very easy to interfere with the candidacy part on getting on the ballot access within the state of Virginia. And that needs to be looked at by anybody on the party. This 10,000 signatures, 400. There is no other state in the union that requires that. To run for the president of the United States, you don't have to collect 5,000 signatures, but to run for governor, lieutenant governor, or Senate, you need 10,000 minimum, which obviously you need to get over because some are going to be disallowed or not be considered right. But the amount, this was created for two reasons. One, to stop party selecting, and basically running mass meetings and stuff like that to vote in your candidate. Two, to keep Joe Smo off the ballot, somebody who finds it more difficult. We had no problem. To this day, we had the signatures. We had a movement around the state, Northern Virginia, the peninsula, Southwest Virginia, Central Virginia. We had people everywhere collecting these signatures, sending them in across the state. That wasn't the problem for us, but other people, especially an independent that doesn't have the party connections, committees that are all doing signature drives and stuff around the state, they're at a loss. They don't have that network to get to it. And, again, what does it hurt to have that name on the ballot? It doesn't. And maybe when you end up on the actual ballot on election day, 5 different candidates, maybe ranked choice starts playing in there. Like as you mentioned, when you have a whole list, that could come in more than one because you have it split so much. But I think the state really needs to look at who are they hurting and who are they keeping off the ballot and silencing when they have the system as it is. And it is a vulnerable system to be interfered with, and that's clear.
And in terms of that system, Ms. Donna Charles, again, running for governor as an independent running candidate, what would you improve if you could?
Well, I think John makes a really good point about why the rules, why the guidelines, why the requirements are set up the way they are. It is abundantly clear that the goal is to minimize what I like to call, it's not meant to be a euphemism, but what I think the larger parties consider to be, stray fire, to be people who will come into the process, may not necessarily fit a particular narrative, but may be able to garner sufficient support. The goal is to keep the threshold extremely high so as to allow the major parties to ensure that they have an advantage over any other person who wants to engage in the civic process as they are entitled to by law. So I think John makes a very good point there. I will say wholeheartedly that I am a huge fan of ranked choice voting, and I think it offers opportunities for people to emerge in the political process that who would provide some fresh energy, some fresh blood in the political system. But in terms of this particular process, the 10,000 signature threshold is exceptionally high. I also think, though, that the Department of Elections should be either empowered or invested some responsibility, either through an investigative arm or some form of responsibility in ensuring that if these forms have an affidavit that the collectors or the circulators have to sign, and the circulator is subjecting him or herself to the jurisdiction of the Commonwealth, like John said, there should be remedy. There should be remedy if something goes haywire in that process, especially because the requirements are such that you do have to get a pen and ink signature. You have to have hard copies. There has to be a process whereby there's a level of accountability, and that anybody who has to file a grievance has some level of recourse. especially given the somewhat arcane method in which this process is supposed to be carried out. Hand signatures, you go district to district, 400 minimum per district for a 10,000 threshold. That's a lot of work. That's a massive investment. And I believe that if you are, as a Department of Elections, mandating that people follow these guidelines and requirements, then there should be an investigative arm and some form of recourse, some form of remedy that they provide you should the situation turn out the way, John and I have experienced, where somebody is then incentivized to come into your network, into your system, into your apparatus, and create havoc and mayhem and conduct what is essentially criminal activity. In my case, I was given not a stiff arm per se, but I was basically told that my case would have to be a civil matter, despite there being an affidavit on that form that very clearly says that this would be considered a felony if some malfeasance or some sort of a fraud was determined to be happening at the hand of the circulator. So that's where I think that the state, that the Commonwealth would do well to have some clarity and have a process whereby anybody who is aggrieved the way John and I were aggrieved in this process has some avenue for recourse.
I want to throw a YouTube comment up that I just had come across my screen here, and that is from Michelle Lavoie, who is in Virginia Beach and who very recently was attempting a run for House of Delegates in the 97th district and was getting signatures herself. So she would definitely like the idea of electronic signatures being accepted with confirmation of identity. I would imagine both of you might agree to that as well.
Agree. Sorry to jump in there, but not only do I heartily agree, but I'm sure John will agree that we have proof of, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, John, but we've had proof of concept, right? During the COVID pandemic, where we had the emergency declaration, forcing the Commonwealth to consider the electronic option as being the most viable option to keep people safe. And so until that declaration of emergency was rescinded, that was the process that was used. And a lot of people seem to think that offers an opportunity not just for expanding access for individuals like me to run for office, but also to provide what I would call a digital or forensic trail. That way you have an opportunity to conduct some research on whether or not, okay, is this person who this person says he or she is? What was the process by which the signature was obtained? And I don't see any reason why we wouldn't want to have that sort of digital or forensic trail to conduct an investigation should there be a question about the signature, the provenance of a signature, or even the status of the form, or whether or not that person can vouch for having conducted that signature or place that signature on that form. So I'll leave it there.
Mr. John, do you agree?
Yeah, actually, when this happened, I had a few tech guys, and I'm far from being super tech savvy, where if you go into some bars and some places, if you break out your driver's license, the doorman has a machine that can scan your license and check if it's real and all that. They showed simple apps that a collector, when you're having signature, could have on their phone that can scan a person's ID, the same barcode, list it. All the person has to do is check yes, that they want to sign. That data doesn't even have to be kept on the person's phone. It can be uploaded right to the candidate's account with Department of Elections. Keep a track. That would immediately tell them what district they're in, where they are, and also stop that person from signing, recollecting them 2 weeks later somewhere else. It already shows it's collected. Plus, you don't have to worry about them disappearing, fire happening, a flood happening. I understand last year there was a case where candidates were on their way, and one of the main highways, don't know which one it was, there was a major accident. They didn't make it to the deadline, and they had to go to court to get their signature. Your signatures are uploaded. They're there. There's no run, that your tally's there. When you make it, boom, it's done, and it's ready to be accepted. Right now, the candidates, have to try to verify those signatures. They're going through hardly written, because people are writing their names on the back of a clipboard, basically. Penmanship is not the clearest thing to read. There's questions on what's valid, what's not. That eliminates all of that. And it could even go to a point where people who are rural, very rural, who want to have a say, can go onto a website and say, I want to support this person, and sign their ballot right on their own website, or use their own phone to scan their ID or whatever and upload it. So if a person says, I really like this individual, I want them on there, I don't know where to sign their petition, they could go and sign the petition. It would open it up so much more. I know there's a lot of debate about it, and say, well, if you do that, then you can do electronic voting. I think getting a signature for a petition is a whole lot different than casting an actual vote. And I believe there are two different things, but still it is part of the election process. And again, they make it clear petition signature is not a vote. It's just a backing that you want that person on there. So I think collecting the signatures electronically, it becomes neater and it stops interference. There's always been question on whether, I've heard people say, oh, candidates have people sitting around a conference table, each one writing the name out of a phone book on there. I mean, I didn't do it. I don't know anybody does, but those are rumors that are out there. People Xeroxing other, documents on good Xerox. You don't know, but the possibility with those handwritten petitions are, anything is available for fraud, misconduct, misuse, abuse, and either adding signatures or removing signatures from there. And I think the electronic eliminates that ability, because you're going to need an ID. Virginia requires an ID to vote. There should be an ID to sign that petition. You have to be a registered voter to sign a petition anyway. So people should have their ID and be able to scan it. Boom, it's done. It's over and it's counted. So you're.
Personally, I want to thank Michelle Lavoie for dropping that comment in, because comments and likes, subscriptions, that's what helps grow Shows Who. And of course, that's my number one goal here at the moment, as we discuss great politics, is also growing Shows Who. So I want to go to my next question here regarding drama that might have happened within this run in 2025 for both of your campaigns, scandals, if you will. Let me start with Ms. Donna. What has happened that is more interesting than you might have thought going into running for office that you would wish to share?
Sure. And I appreciate the question, because I am very new to not just running a campaign, but being technically a politician. I don't consider myself a politician. And I have had some very interesting engagements and meetings with people who are diehard Democrats, who have very staunch and entrenched positions about the role of either third party or independent candidates. And one of my most recent experiences was rather unfortunate, where I had attempted to register for a summit that was open to various candidates to participate in, just learning about the coalition broadening process, democratic processes. It didn't necessarily say that it was for Democrats or for Republicans. And the person on the other end of the line, after they figured out who I am and identified myself, was rather blunt in her chastising of chastising me for deciding to run. Told me that I would regret the decision. Told me that I was making a major mistake, that I better drop out of the race. I mean, it was very difficult to listen to. Of course, I let her go on, and it was important for me to allow her to voice her opinion and concerns. But to hear that from somebody who was hosting an event that was meant to broaden coalitions and help raise awareness about civic engagement and the electoral process here in Virginia was somewhat jarring. And I don't get as many of those reactions as I do people who are not just curious, but excited about the idea of somebody running outside of the party paradigm. But when I do get those reactions from people, I am obviously quick to be gracious and open to what they have to say, but also flagging the fact that we live in a democracy. What I am doing is within the bounds of the law, obviously, but my goal is to not only earn everyone's vote, but to provide people an opportunity to have a real choice in November. Because it is very clear that, at least at the governor level, candidates were essentially selected. People did not have an opportunity to select a nominee. And there are so many people that I've talked to, as John mentioned early on, who don't even know that there's an election happening. And those who do know that there's an election happening are not happy with either of the candidates. To me, it seems rather odd to be blamed, if you will, for an outcome that hasn't materialized yet. And also that there's no empirical evidence to suggest is the cause for any one candidate to have lost a race, especially in Virginia's history, let alone if you look at the national elections last year. So when I get those reactions, I make sure people have an opportunity to air their concerns. And it has happened more than once, but I am more than happy to make clear that I am grateful that we live in a democracy and in a country and in a state that allows candidates to engage in the civic process in a way that is amenable to their means and their willingness to run a campaign.
Thank you for that. Now, Mr. John, in your first pursuing the primary field and then now being an independent write-in, have you run across anything that might be considered dramatic or scandalous regarding your campaign?
Well, I mean, first of all, if you learn very quick, the minute you put your name anywhere near a ballot, you better be prepared for anything in the world that can come flying at you. True, not true, what's going on? I found what I actually found shocking on the early end was how fast other candidates, just in the signature collecting stage, you weren't even battling it out with anybody yet, immediately wanted to go into opposition research on other people. And they were more concerned on taking down anybody else. I'm lucky in my career, when I was in the military, when I came out, I had great bosses and mentors that always push pretty much the same exact thing, that strong leadership brings people up. They don't hold people down. And you find those people I find those candidates and stuff that put so much into the opposition and trying to tear down the other person. When you look through it, they very rarely have anything else to offer, so they try to hide their lack with other people. I was kind of blown away by just how far that went. With that, obviously, the Republican ticket has a lot of controversy on it right now, and issues with opposition research coming out, when it's going to come out, how much of it will come out. And that's really what pushed me in when I got it. I had so many people reach out that they weren't happy with that choice. Now, once I made that choice, I had some nasty things coming at me, how I'm splitting the party, I'm going to split the ticket, it's going to be my fault if the ticket fails. I looked at it a different way. I had people not telling me I'm not going to vote for this candidate. I had people saying they weren't going to show up to vote at all. And to me, when that person doesn't show up to vote, sure, you're not voting for that candidate, but you're not going to vote for a governor. You're not going to vote for an attorney general. You're not going to vote for your supervisors, your delegates, your school board members, and whatever else you have, mud and soil guys, whoever is on the ballot. You're giving away that ticket all the way across the form, whoever's on there. And a lot of those, basically everybody in this state, when you get down underneath the delegate level and the supervisor level, are considered independents. They don't have a party affiliations on the ballot anymore. So that's when I stepped in. And my feeling is, if I bring people to the poll and it does split a ticket and they fill those rest of the piece, then I brought the people to the poll. And as much as somebody says I might split my party, I might actually save those other seats because those people are coming. But the more I got into it, when I was in the Navy, I was lucky enough to work on Reagan's inauguration. The military has the inauguration committee for the president. when he has the inauguration, on Reagan's second inauguration. And when I got to meet Reagan and I had a chance to speak with Reagan, there was a long story, but basically had a thing to tell me that never forget that the job is bigger than you, who you are, and that your job is not to anybody except the people who voted for you, and the people you represent. And I think in this country lately, we have truly lost that vibe in a lot of these seats. And it's nice to be able to come back in and truly pay attention to the people who you're going to vote for. And if somebody thinks I'm splitting a ticket and that's their concern over more than the people who are going to make that vote, if I bring enough in to cause that much damage, where the RPV chair said he isn't worried about it, I won't get 1%. But then I heard, which really kind of shocked me, that some election officials are saying they have to update the election machines to handle the write-in votes. There's always been a write-in vote. Why are they now worried about this write-in vote thing, and why hasn't that been handled? I'm hearing stories that when a write-in comes through, when it creates the tape off the machines, they're illegible. How do they handle those things? And now all of a sudden it becomes an issue, and I'm causing an issue because I could be that write-in candidate that breaks the 10% or breaks on a statewide ticket. And again, if your candidate is that good, I'm not a threat to anybody, but I think people are saying they want to be heard. On our side, on the Republican side, the people never got to vote for anybody. There was no Republican for at least the top three seats, no Republican primary at all. One of that shame that Pat Harity, one of them, had a health issue and had to fail, and that was a shame. That would have been a fight still. Even if it was only those two, I probably wouldn't have entered as a write-in candidate at that point, because there was a real payoff. But when you saw that control, that panic out of the party sides on what is a write-in going to do to our thing, but then they undermine the idea that, oh, well, it's only a write-in, it isn't a threat. It's how can you have it's not a threat, but they're panicked and they're threatening people. It's not, and God forbid, if the people actually have a voice and can pick their own candidate, it's going to really show a different side. So some of it was very eye-opening. I will tell anybody who's planning on ever running, you got to take a whole nother view of how you trust people and really take care, because you will have no friends in politics. And I shouldn't say that, because I have some great friends and great support, but the people who come knocking on your door as your friend, always be careful of, because it's a dirty world out here, and it's a shame, because it's an important thing and it's an important part of our lives of politics. So,
and I think a lot of what makes the sort of reaction you might get from the two main parties, the Democrats and the Republicans, is a co-fear that both parties have of the other winning. So the idea of a third or fourth or fifth or sixth option just scares them probably more than the other candidate does, because they really want to win. And as we were discussing that last question, I opened up a window of Wikipedia for the 2013 Virginia gubernatorial election, which was interesting because, again, that was 1 year after the re-election of Barack Obama. And Virginia is usually the bellwether state that there will be a massive push against the incumbent presidency who just gets nominated again. So they expected the Republicans to win in 2013, but Terry McAuliffe won in 2013, a very, very close race against Ken Cuccinelli. And that difference was only about 50 or so thousand votes from Terry McAuliffe to Ken Cuccinelli. And in third place was Robert Sarvis, the Libertarian, who got about 6.52% of the total vote, or 146,000 votes in the state of Virginia. And I bet he got a severe amount of backlash, probably from both parties going into Election Day, but definitely more from the Republicans after Election Day, for fear that he cost Cuccinelli the election. So in that instance, both of you are fighting what might some say is a good fight and expanding the opportunity for people to vote for a myriad of candidacies. But the two major parties are going to give you a lot of flack for what you're doing, which leads me to my last question here. And this is going to be sort of an individualized way for you guys to answer this because you're both running for different seats. But what are the significant differences between your campaigns and the two major candidates that would be in each seat? And I do want to lead off with Mr. John in this one, who is running for Lieutenant Governor of Virginia as a write-in. Well, what's significantly different about your race compared to the other two?
I think my race goes back, and it's what I've said throughout, is I'm more concentrated on making the people have their voice again and representing the people, and even those who don't vote for me. I mean, there's going to be Democrats, there's going to be independents, going to be Republicans, all voting their sides. Whoever wins, if I win the write-in and went against those two, it's to take, and I've mentioned this when I was on the show before, I think I'm the only one who's pushing transparency and willing to call out what happens in that state house that interferes with our lives because of the borders that are being put up, where things aren't getting out of committees, things aren't being presented, and they're bills that could make differences in people's lives that are being stopped, not because they're bad bills, not because they aren't correct, not because they couldn't be negotiated, but because this party didn't like the fact this party put that bill forward and they blocked it out. And I hate to say it, it's almost going to have to be like going to the principal's office. You're going to have to pull these representatives out and call them out publicly and bring them to the attention of their constituents. And the thing is, a lot of the times, the people who head those committees in our state house aren't your local representative. They're just somebody else's representative. But you need to know, you might have never heard of this person, but this person just blocked this bill that could have changed what your child eats for lunch in school, or the education your child gets, or your access to health care, your access to whatever, your taxes, the hated car tax we could have stopped. You don't know, but you got to call it out, and things need to come. There needs to be responsibility put on both sides of the party. Both sides are guilty of it. And even if I was the Republican candidate, I would do the same thing, because it just needs to stop. We're getting nowhere. It's costing us money. It's costing the state money, and we're taking a back seat. And I think I'm the only candidate that's willing to call those things out and also put an honest things. I think I mentioned in the last show, this car tax people hate. I think I'm the only candidate that's brought up the fact that for the 44 years that I've had to deal with car tax that I drive in Virginia, was 44 years of different candidates saying they were getting rid of the car tax, and we still have a car tax. And it isn't going to go away fast, but there is a way we can drizzle it out as we come up with different way. It's not going to be an overnight fix, because there is so many cities and counties in this Commonwealth who are dependent on that funds that would make it. And you just can't yank it and still have the service. But we can phase that out, change it, control it, do other things to provide relief to the taxpayer and give them, and stop calling it a tax. It's a penalty basically for having a car in Virginia. But I think I'm the only one that's willing to say, look, let's be honest. There is no magic wand to make these issues disappear on day one and be accepted. I mean, I'm sure a governor could go in and try to do an executive order. I don't think they have an opinion to eliminate a car tax or something, or demand it. And even if they did, I just don't see it ever making it through, because there's too many people who represent areas that need that money, and they're not going to let that money go. So it's going to take some work, and you have to be honest to the voter. Hey, I'm going to work on that. We're going to get it done, but it takes time to make change happen, and it takes hard work. And people need to remember, we're all talking about some hard work and working together. And maybe when somebody starts saying, oh, wow, I don't have to go in and wave the magic wand and have it fixed the first day, they're more willing to sit down and, okay, let's get the process and let's get this working and get moving to the solutions. And I think the only one, because I think I'm the only one in there that's actually run a business and knows what it's like to have accountability and hit snags, have failures that actually cost you. It's not just, oh, we ran out of money, let's bring in some more tax money and make up for it. No, I mean, it's you're out of money, you got some real issues that you're dealing with. And that's what I think sets me apart from the other candidates that are running right now. Plus, I'm just not going nasty. He's a Democrat, he's a Republican. Right now, I don't have that platform they can throw at me. Oh, well, the Democrats are bad or the Republican is bad. Okay, the independent's bad, he's splitting the ticket. I don't think any voter is going to break out a handkerchief here and now on crime. So.
Thank you for that, Mr. John. And on to Ms. Donna Charles, again, who is a candidate for Governor of Virginia, independent write-in. What is distinctful about your run compared to the other two main candidates?
Well, one of the things that I have been very willing and very willing to do and very vocal about is pledging to keep dark money, big money, large corporate donors out of my donor pool. And that has been an important connection that I've been able to make with voters during my time on the stump. Primarily because people are very tired of dealing with politicians who don't have their core interests in mind, who actually have corporate interests in mind. And more often than not, when your donors are largely of the corporate class or of special interest, it's very difficult to tell a voter to his or her face that you have their interests in mind when the majority of your funding comes from a corporate donor who has a very specific interest in mind for you and what they want you to do for them. So I think that definitely pulls me apart from the two major candidates in this race. Another thing that I've noticed as well during my time on the trail is just showing up and being present in certain areas where a lot of people are interested in talking to a candidate, understanding where they are on the issues, and when they've requested the candidates to show up, it's interesting to me. The places where I've shown up, people are like, yeah, we made the request and we were ghosted. Nobody ever showed up. Nobody even got back to us, or they sent a rep in their place. And I'm talking about issues surrounding the environment. For instance, these gas plants that are going to be, that are being planned for Virginia, data centers on issues related to housing and the housing crisis here in Virginia. And the list goes on, childcare as well. These are issues that I've been able to connect with not just voters, but also advocates and community leaders, faith-based organizations who have been very eager to hear from either of the major party candidates and have not been able to make a breakthrough. And that is one of the reasons that I'm so encouraged by moving forward with a write-in campaign, because while I know it will be daunting and I know it will be very difficult, the connections I've been able to make in the relatively short time that I have launched this write-in campaign has made it clear that my candidacy, my campaign is filling an important gap that is not being tended to, that's not being minded by the major parties here. And when it comes to this idea, this notion that an independent candidate is going to, split the vote in a way that would be detrimental to one party or the other, I think it goes back to John's point. Why would we ever want to disenfranchise or diminish the vote of anybody who determines that they want a different choice? I think it's more important to ensure that every voter who has the chance and opportunity and the right to vote should be heard in the way in which he or she wants to be heard. And so that's what I think pulls me apart from either of the candidates. Not only am I not scared to run in a race that is not necessarily built for me or my campaign, but I'm willing to go to the places and the spaces that other candidates are not.
I want to personally thank you, Mr. John Curran, Ms. Donna Charles, for coming on Chez You tonight to talk about the trials and tribulations of running a write-in candidate for major statewide office here in the state of Virginia. And I want to encourage Chez You viewers who no longer rewatch this, but get into the mood of getting political this fall. Look up Donna Charles, look up John Curran, look up their websites, look up their social media profiles, learn what makes them them, while you study the other Democrat and Republican candidates, and that way you become the best voter you can possibly be. And that's all I can encourage you, besides, of course, liking and commenting and subscribing to Chez You's content. Again, I want to thank you, Mr. John, Ms. Donna, for coming on. I hope you guys have a great night.
Thank you.
Catch you guys around next time. All right, this has been another great Shiz Who, a really good Shiz Who. Thank you, Miss Michelle, for commenting on that. I want you guys to look them up, look at other great political stuff of your fancy before we head into the July 4th weekend, and of course, subscribe to the Shiz Who channel because we're going to keep bringing you great content